All
Thank
right.
you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of The Sense presented by By Impuls. Today, we're going to be discussing some very important topics with Jordan O'Hara, the head of marketing over at Esportspedia. We're going to be discussing entrepreneurship in esports and, all those fun stuff that, startups do and what it really takes to really get into the industry. So I'll let Jordan introduce himself.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eddie.
No problem.
Jordan O'Hara. I'm the head of marketing at Esports One, which is the parent company of Esportspedia. Esports One is a software startup in the esports industry. We're building some pretty cool technology that you guys will be seeing real soon. And Esportspedia is kind of our existing product, if you could call it, or property that we've had in the esports industry for the last couple of years. And basically, it's a network of Wikipedia-like sites that cover various esports titles, currently League of Legends, Call of Duty, Halo, and Smite.
Definitely. So I want to get started, So essentially, what do you do for a living, right? Sometimes, explain to people what you actually do, what your role is in those companies, and overall, just your personal stuff, what you do for a living.
Sure. So before Esportspedia, I've had about 4.5 years of experience working in corporate IT, anywhere from help desk to sysadmin roles. So when I first started getting into esports, uh, was supporting myself through my IT job, and recently being, I guess, almost about 4 months ago now, quit my job, went full time doing marketing for Esports One. And as far as that, it entails everything from just kind of the running of the social media accounts on Twitter. We have a network of Twitter accounts for all our various uh, Esportspedia wiki sites, as well as future sites that we're going to be releasing: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitch, which we set up recently, YouTube, which we're setting up. So just kind of the general social media management, as well as helping define the overall direction of the brand as a whole. And
Right.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff. Setting up partnerships is another really big thing.
Definitely. Just kind of like a follow-up question. So, how did you get started in esports? You said you had other projects prior to being on board with Esportspedia and Esports One. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, God, the first thing I did. Okay, no, if we're gonna do this, go all the way back to the beginning. So,
Yeah.
I was working IT, and IT is great. Um, I knew I liked playing video games, and I had started playing League a while ago, and then started watching professional League of Legends, and decided I wanted to get into the esports industry somehow. So I tried a bunch of different things at first, which is a topic I think we'll touch on later.
Yeah.
Kind of deciding what you want to do in esports, and I started out. God, what was the first thing I did? I think the first thing I did was I tried Twitch streaming. That went okay. We got to around 20 concurrent viewers at a time. Um, then tried moving to blogging. Was like or I guess journalism. I was the head League of Legends journalist for the site called Adventures in Poor Taste. Shout
Right.
out to them. They're actually still up. So
Nice.
I did that for a little while. You can still read a couple of my articles on there if you search pretty hard. um, then I decided that wasn't for me. I tried creating my own journalism slash blog site based around League of Legends, and then bringing on other people to write the articles and whatnot. Did that, wasn't for me. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start an esports organization. Know nothing about it. We're just going to jump into it,
Right.
get it started. And that was very interesting. Ran that for about, it was called Colossus Esports. Ran that for about a year and a half. Started
Right.
from 0 followers across any accounts, and just kind of learned as I went. Started signing very amateur players, using that to grow social media, having them compete in amateur events. Uh, Brought on designers that would work for exposure, and then you just
Mm.
kind of started at the bottom and worked the way up. Eventually, we got sponsorship from an app called Chirp. A shout out to them; they were awesome. It was awesome working with Jane over there.
Yeah.
And so eventually after about a year, we got a couple sponsors lined up. Social media, probably 15,000 or so followers across platforms. So that was a big learning experience. Eventually, I left that to work on another project, which was a professional esports organization that I co-founded with a friend of mine that operated out of Oceania. Um, and we had a Challenger Series League of Legends team, top 4 Counter Strike team, best Rocket League team in the region,
Right.
best StarCraft player in the region. So running esports organizations is very fun. And it was while I was running Nuovo that I was reached out to by Matthew Gunn, the CEO of Esports One, to come on and do marketing for them.
Definitely. You said that essentially when you started your organization at the time with Colossus, you said that you just kind of went with it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, what was like the mindset going into it? Was it more like I'm gonna try it out, and if it doesn't work out, I'm just gonna move on to something better, or was it almost like you were fully committed to making it work, or fully committed to the whole idea?
Yeah, at the very beginning, like I said, at that point in time, as I was kind of touching on, I was hopping around a lot from various idea to various idea, trying to figure out what I liked in the esports industry.
Right.
And yeah, I'd say like the first month maybe of running Colossus, it was still kind of in that phase of figuring out, is this something that I'd like to do longer term? And actually because running your own esports organization, unless you're someone that has great connections in the scene and you can get funding right off the bat, running an esports organization or growing one from the ground up is going to take a lot of time, like a huge amount of time, and also a decent bit of money. So I had to really decide. The first month was kind of figuring out if it's something I wanted to put all of that time and energy and money into. And after that, once I decided it was, then from month one onwards, it was something I was super passionate about, building the brand and growing the community, and it was super great.
No, definitely. What was probably the biggest learning experience that you had while developing Colossus, right? Or in other projects that you worked on? What was like the biggest, like, oh, okay, this is something that almost like triggered overall, like, oh, I understand it now. I understand the market. I understand the whole scene.
Probably the idea that you have this conundrum if you're going to start an amateur esports organization and try to grow it to something big,
Right.
where assuming that you're like the 99% of other of people that want to start an amateur esports organization, you're not going to be able to get funding right off the bat. Assuming that, you have this conundrum where or this paradox where you need to bring on either good content creators on YouTube or Twitch,
Right.
or good professional teams to grow the validity of the brand and increase followers and build the community to get the funding. But to get those players and those good content creators, you need to have built the brand and the following to a certain point that they'd be interested in coming on, because you can't
Mhm.
really pay them a huge amount right off the bat. So you have this interesting paradox that you have to figure out. And the way I'd worked through that was learned that it's really all about, I guess, trading up. You start out with what you can get. You're not going to get uh, a Call of Duty team that'll be able to compete anywhere near CWL level right off the bat.
Right.
So you start out with something very amateur, have them play in a couple online Twitter run tournaments or something like that, and then
Yeah.
inevitably, because it's a very, very amateur Call of Duty roster and they're all egoing each other, the lineup's going to fall apart, and you get a better one from the exposure you gained
No, exactly.
from
Definitely.
that point. So it's all about, and then like same with designers, you get people that will make you the very beginnings of very amateur images for your social media and for your brand, and then as you start getting more exposure, you can get better designers that are willing to do work for exposure, a little bit of money still, and then you can keep increasing. Um, so basically, you just use the players to get some more exposure, and then use that more exposure to get better people in the organization, and then use that to get more exposure, and you keep trading up. Also, providing as much value as you can to the community. Um, One of the big things I did was I created a community based around, like I created a secondary social media account on Twitter that was exclusively a community of content creators,
Hmm.
called the Colossus Empire. To join, they just had to put our account at in their bio, and then everyone that was a part of the group would share everyone else's content on Twitch or YouTube when they posted. So creating that and facilitating that group to provide value to everyone in the group while mutually promoting Colossus Esports really helped grow. So just provide as much value to everyone that you can.
No, definitely. I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think, a lot of those things are for some odd reason people tend to kind of overlook or don't follow, and that's kind of how a lot of the amateur scene kind of falls with
Mhm.
organizations. So definitely, I definitely agree with you 100%. Kind of changing gears a little bit. Do you think there's a specific thing that put you in the position you are today, like a specific attitude or a specific like method of just work ethic?
You have to be willing. I mean, esports is if you want to get into there's a lot of people getting into the esports industry just because it's kind of the hot topic right now,
Right.
with collegiate esports taking off and traditional teams getting into esports, or traditional sports teams getting into esports. Um, there are a lot of people just going in for like a money grab, and in my opinion, you really need to work on esports only if you're passionate about it. That's how the industry's grown to where it is today, is just from people starting projects and creating companies based off of passion. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, don't work on it unless you're passionate about it. There's a lot better ways to make money if you're just looking to make money.
Yeah, I know, I agree. A lot of people, it takes a lot of effort, right? So, what's an average day for you, right? Like, obviously, building a startup or building a company is not easy at all, right? Especially if you're really, really involved in the creation and development of the company itself in esports, right? What's in like a day for you, right? Like, what time do you get up? How does it work for you?
Yeah. So I just actually got back. I live in Virginia. I just got back to Virginia from about 3 months in New York City and Manhattan, the Startup Accelerator. So at the Startup Accelerator, average day was getting into the office around 8 or 8:30, um, and usually working there until, or not getting home until 6 to 8, depending on the day, at least. So, and then usually working some more in the evening. And there would we had not daily meetings, but we had meetings with the other people in the Startup Accelerator a couple of times a week, and we had guest lecturers come in talking about things that they were kind of that they specialized in, and then just finding way. It was just a lot of social media work, building the brand, working on the business side of things with the pitch deck to bring to investors, the business model, and yeah, just finding stuff to work on all day, as much as you can. Now that I'm back here, I don't want to say it's a little more laid back. It's a little less stressful. It was just stressful up there because it was New York, but
New
here
York
it's
City.
yeah, it was awesome, but it was very very busy. Um, Here it's getting up around 9 or so, or by 9, at the desk working by 9. Got my nice dual monitor set up back. It's done working off of a laptop, thank God. Um, and yeah, it's social media. It's tracking what happens in the esports industry across different game titles and business, getting that up on social media, interacting with the community, figuring out, working with partners that we've established in the space, and looking for more partners in the space. Still working on the business side of things, and then kind of figuring out interesting ways to promote the company. Got some cool stuff coming up that I'm developing for Twitch currently,
Nice.
so keep an eye out.
Definitely, definitely. We'll have all the social media links down below where you can find Jordan and Esportspedia and the whole Esports One company. So regarding how do you explain esports to the average person, right? To the family member, to the family that you go to Christmas to, and you explain to them what you do. How do you explain that to them? Because I know it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, yeah. It's if I'm just explaining to a random person on the street, I usually just use the sports reference. You ask them if they're a sports person. Say, okay, yeah, well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but people play video games competitively, just like you would play a sport. And they operate on teams. They have coaches. They have analysts. They have managers. They have talent managers. They have or talent agents. They have mental health or mental wellness sort of coaches as well. And once you kind of explain and then touch on the fact that colleges are offering scholarships for esports, touch on the fact that traditional sports teams are getting into esports, if you can kind of throw all of that down, like that at the very least like blast through their any conceptions they might have that gaming is just something that lazy people do for fun. Um, and and then you can actually start talking about what it is you actually do. If I'm talking to a family member, I usually just start off with what I actually do. Um, yeah, I do marketing for a company in the gaming industry. And if they're more interested in that, then I'll go into more details about what esports is.
No, yeah, definitely. It's sometimes difficult, but at the same time, yeah, the sports reference, I'm not gonna lie, is probably the best way to explain it. It's very well now, they're transitioning to more traditional sport tactics and methods in esports, so that's makes it a lot more easier to actually explain now than 5, 10 years ago, where people
Yeah,
were like,
absolutely.
what is this?"
Yeah.
Okay, so working with people in esports, is there something you've learned that kind of surprised you? Or like, oh, this is completely different to traditional uh, industries, right? Business industries.
Sorry, could you say that again?
So, working in esports, is there something you have learned from the people within the industry that surprised you? That you were like, oh wow, this is really different. This is what sets these this industry apart from traditional business.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I have a background in corporate IT, and that was very. I don't know. It was there's lots of red tape if you're working for like a really large corporation. Um, Lots of processes you have to go through, and processes are definitely good to a degree. You need organization and to be able to document things, but to a degree, there's a certain threshold, and it's really hard to put your finger on it. But there's a certain point that you cross a threshold where that starts just hindering you from getting work done. It keeps
Right.
people from being innovative. It keeps them from being as productive sometimes. And that's much less of an issue in the esports industry because oftentimes it's run by people in kind of management positions or younger people, maybe more forward thinking than people that are settled into their 9 to 5 jobs for the last 30 years and have kind of settled into their ways. Um, so yeah, I would say that's really awesome. It's nice. You don't have to wake up and then do the same thing every single day, which is fantastic. And
Yeah.
also, I don't know. I think also partially because of the background in the corporate world, I was expecting any industry to kind of mirror that.
Mhm.
But yeah, esport like so many people. There's every industry has its people that aren't super fun to work with,
Mhm.
but the esports industry has a much lower amount of those from my experience. Pretty much anyone, if you're able to provide some value to them, they'll provide value back to you. And everyone's generally pretty cool. Everyone is not everyone. The large majority of people in esports are there in
Right.
esports because they love esports. So it's makes it a very good experience.
No, definitely, definitely. You said you touched on how a lot of the people that run these companies are predominantly very young, right, compared to traditional, business, end of things. What would you say to people that are young that are trying to become entrepreneurs in the scene, right? That are trying to come on to like, hey, you know what, I have this idea. What do you say to those individuals?
If it's something you're passionate about, just do it. I think people spend too much time thinking about an idea.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of people are kind of under the misconception that it's like, oh, I have this great, whether it's an idea for a company or an app or a web app or something like that. Um, Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's like 1% of of what you need to do.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe if it's an amazing world-changing Facebook level idea, it's 5% of what you need to do. Usually, it's just 1%. Um, but so I would say don't spend a ton of time planning out, writing a huge business plan or figuring out who else you're going to have on the team or figuring out, what platforms you're going to be on or the technical side of things. Like just start. Don't spend a month planning out the website, super in depth, get something up, build a landing page for your thing, build social media for your thing, start promoting your thing, start building your thing. Most of the ideas that you'll have, whether it's an esports organization or a software startup or something like that, can be started. You might need funding at a certain point
Mhm.
to kind of bring it to the next level, but you usually can get to a certain point, MVP, a minimum viable product, without much or any funding. You can usually self fund it and just put a lot of time and energy into it. or
Yeah,
find other
definitely.
people. If you have an idea and you're a marketing guy or a business guy, you're not a developer, you need a developer to work on the project, you can find a developer that will work on it, you know, without needing to be paid a full salary. And I talking about that from experience. So just get started. If it's something you're passionate about, just get started.
Definitely. Previously we spoke about how you have to also kind of be very out there, right? A lot of these people sometimes have like, I guess, I don't want to say talking issues. They're kind of shy. They don't really want to be out there. They don't want to like get out of that bubble. Would you agree that that's something that you really need to do? You need to network. You need to put yourself out there and not be afraid to, in a sense, almost like fail.
Yeah, I mean, being scared of failure is something that I definitely felt um, back in the day, and still struggle with it sometimes. It's something that I think a lot more people struggle with than you might think. And that's one thing that helps is just realizing that more people don't actually know what the hell they're doing than you think. You're not the only one. Um, but let's see. Yeah, I think that. Damn, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the second part of the question? I lost it.
No, yeah. So essentially, right when it comes to the whole idea that you start up a company, right? Sometimes you really need to be out there. You really need to
Yeah,
push yourself
networking and
to yeah.
yeah, no, it's very important in esports. Esports is a very community driven industry.
Mhm,
It has vastly different communities based on the game title or the type of business,
mhm.
which is one of the reasons Esportspedia is super valuable to us as a company. One, because it allows us just a way to interact with the community.
Right.
And two, it allows us to interact with very specific segments of the community, of the Halo community, the Call of Duty community. The Halo community
Right.
is vastly different from the League of Legends community.
Mhm.
Um, and same with Call of Duty and Smite or whatever. Everything is vastly different from each other, and so if you're going to build something, I mean, I guess just speaking from the angle of an esports organization, if you're going to build an esports organization, especially one from the ground up, and if you might not have, and you might not have a ton of experience having done that before, uh, networking and building connections and having people promote you and promoting them and building those partnerships and relationships is a huge reason that you're going to, I guess, a huge factor on if you're going to succeed or not. So yeah, I mean, push yourself one time a day to do something that's outside of your comfort zone,
Mhm.
whether it's just talking to someone you wouldn't have normally talked to, or commenting on someone that's wearing something cool that you like when you're walking down the street and you notice that it's cool, but you would never usually say something about it. Just say something. Step outside of your comfort zone, start doing that more often, and eventually you'll become more comfortable with everything.
Definitely, definitely. So throughout your career, if you could go back to the beginning, to the middle, to now, 5 hours ago, is there something you would do differently that you think was like, ooh, if I would have done this, maybe it would have plummeted me into something bigger or put me in a better situation?
Hmm. There's definitely things I could have done better with Colossus. I mean, if I could go back to like Nuovo Gaming, which was the professional oceanic organization,
Right.
if I could go back to that with the knowledge that I have now, that would be fantastic. Just because a large reason that we put Nuovo Gaming on a hiatus was because we let me get a little bit into the backstory of Nuovo. So we wanted to. It's much cheaper financially to enter at like the professional level of esports in Australia, just because there's lower viewership over there, and thus it
Right.
costs less to get into the scene. That also means that there's less sponsorship money flying around over there. So our idea was to run the organization, my co-founder and I, to run it self-funded until we could sign sponsorships. And the idea was to build a really professional. At the time, also, Australia was having a lot of issues like with players signing bad contracts with teams. That's still happening from time to time.
Yeah.
Teams taking a lot of players' prize money, not paying them full salaries, not paying on time, not paying at all. Lots of issues. So our
Hmm.
idea was we're going to go over. We both had experience in the esports organization game. We were going to create a super professional organization, player focused. We when we signed players, we 100% had the best contracts for them in the industry. Um, so we're going to run self-funded with that in mind and build. The idea was to build the TSM brand of Australia.
Hmm.
Uh, because if the esports industry is going to keep growing as a whole, the oceanic industry will continue growing as well, and eventually get to the point where the sponsorship money is being thrown around as much over there as it is over here currently. So we were building that brand. It was going really well, and we weren't able to get sponsorship as fast as we thought we would. We anticipated, about 6 months, max 3 to 6 months, and it was taking a little longer than that, and we couldn't continue funding it out of pocket, unfortunately. So going back there with the experience I have now, I think I would have been able to at the least get some sponsorship money flowing. If not, I think that's something I could successfully pitch to a VC now, which I definitely wouldn't have even known how to begin that process back then. But so yeah, if I could go back to one point with the knowledge I have now, it would probably be there.
All right. For those that don't know what VC is, do you mind explaining?
Yeah, sure. So a VC stands for venture capital, or venture capitalist. Essentially, it's an individual, but more usually a group of individuals that are super experienced in business. They usually had successful companies of their own that either went public. It's called IPO. I forget actually exactly what IPO stands for, but it means they went publicly traded on the stock market. That either IPO'd or were acquired by a larger company. Like when Amazon bought Twitch for $970 million a couple of years ago.
That's a lot of
So VCs are usually people that have been in the startup game before, and now they have kind of grouped together, and either from their own personal resources or they're backed by a larger group of VCs. They go out and invest in startups. So you can pitch to them, pitch your company idea to them. You have what's called a pitch deck that outlines everything about your company, like from your mission to your business plan to what traction you currently have, what you're going to do with the funding. So you pitch to them, and the hopes that they will give you their money to build what you want to build.
Nice, thank you for that explanation. So moving on, this is kind of like a two-part question. So what do you see the entrepreneurs do wrong in the beginning of their whole startup or project? And if it's like what they do in the beginning or what they do that kind of inhibits them to kind of become bigger and better.
Sure. One of the big things that I see in esports, there's really two big things that I see, but the first one that I think can really, it's an really easy kind of trap to fall into in the beginning, is hopping from company to company or project to project. I used to kind of suffer from this. I suffered from shiny object syndrome. I would have an idea and start working on it, and then have another idea, and like, okay, I want both of these at the same time. Then I'd have a third idea, and it's like, man, I really want to do that, but I need to stop one of these two. And that is not good. You need to cut that out. And whether it's that, or I know multiple people in the esports industry that would start one project and build it, and then leave it, and then start another one, build it, leave it, and then join another one. Like, you shouldn't be a part of 6 different things in the span of a year.
Yeah, that just doesn't sound healthy.
2 is fine. Yeah, it doesn't. It builds kind of a negative reputation for you in the industry, as someone that just won't be able to be relied upon as much. And it also, you don't get usually you're leaving because you've hit that fear of failure aspect. Like, you've hit a threshold, and you realize that maybe your experience doesn't cover the things you're going to be doing now. You need to push yourself harder. You're afraid of failure, so you move to something else or something. There's many reasons, but that's one of them. And you're going to learn more if you stick to one thing and work on it, and just do the best you can there. So yeah, that's one big thing. The other big thing is there's a large proliferation of people branding themselves as esports experts. It's fine to try and build your personal brand, but don't say things that aren't true, that will come back to bite you in the butt. And yeah, there's just so many people that are branding themselves as esports industry experts, and it's like, I've never heard of you before. Never heard of that thing that you did before.
Who?
Yeah.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. Being in New York, for the second part of the question, right? What do you see that either, I'm not quite sure if you were in talks with other esports based startups, but I'm sure you've seen a couple, right? Do you see anything that you do wrong that kind of holds him back from getting that capital to be able,
Oh,
yeah, to be
it,
able to push through? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for existing startups, specifically esports startups,
Hmm.
one thing, especially if you're an esports organization, one kind of consistent thing that I've heard from multiple venture capitalists that we've talked
Right.
to is that they are interested in the esports industry because it is gaining so much popularity. The industry is growing 20% year over year, and that's a line from our pitch deck. Um, but they, especially when it comes to investing in something like an esports organization or something like that, they're pretty wary because it's a fairly risky investment. I mean, if you invest in a TSM, TSM is arguably the largest brand in esports in North America, or when it comes to organizations at least.
Hmm.
And they, but if you look at TSM, uh,
Right.
the large majority of their popularity comes from their League of Legends lineup.
Oh, definitely.
And if their League of Legends lineup, there's a chance, however slim, that their lineup could be relegated, and then the large majority of the value that you invested in them for just goes down the toilet, and there's no reimbursement from that. So that's what they call a vertical right there. Like you're investing in an organization whose popularity comes from this one thing,
Right.
and if that one thing goes under, then you lose all of your value. Um,
Hmm.
so they're pretty wary of investing, even though it's I think a lot of startups or people in esports think that, or are under the impression that VCs are like, oh man, esports hot, I want to get in on it, and they don't really think of the fact that of how risky it might be in some aspects. So um, aside from that, you also, when you're actually pitching to a venture capitalist, you need to focus on, like, all they care about is, there's a difference between East Coast and West Coast investors. East Coast investors really care about how you're going to make money. So if you're talking to anyone on the East Coast to invest in your company, like, tell them what you're building, but like the main focus of your deck shouldn't be on why what you're building is super cool. It should be on how you're going to acquire users and how you're going to make them money, and what your business plan is to make them money. On the West Coast, they still obviously want to make their money back, but
Right.
they care a lot more about, they care less about, like, how are you immediately going to start making money than how are you going to start building a giant user base, and then we'll worry about
Hmm.
making money later with that. So it should all be about user acquisition and then how you're going to make money.
No, yeah, definitely. I think that was a really very brief but very interesting and detailed explanation of just overall venture capitalists and the whole way the startup scene works. Um, so when it comes to esports, right, what wakes you up in the morning to actually continue wanting to go and make this company happen and overall just keep working in the industry, right? I mean, people could say, hey, it's easier to just work for 9 to 5 and make six figures
Yeah,
in traditional business.
it is. So if all you care about is making six figures, then go work in corporate IT. It trust me, it's not super hard, and you'll make decent money, assuming you live at anywhere near a semi-major city.
Right.
Um, but I mean, it's passion. That's what I was saying earlier. You should only work in the esports industry if you're passionate about it. And I think that's something that, as an industry and as leaders in the industry, really need to make sure that that's not something that we lose sight of. Um, there is there's a need for professionalism. There's still a need for more
Hmm.
professionalism in the industry, in my opinion. We've come a long way from, I don't know, season 1 League of Legends timeframe, season 2 League of Legends timeframe, but there's
Yeah.
still more growing to do. But I don't think professionalism equals, that doesn't mean bring in business people that are great at business but don't care about
No.
esports at
Yeah.
all. Um,
Don't even know the market.
yeah, exactly. Like, you still need to focus on people who are passionate about esports, and because, especially in the startup world,
Hmm.
skill is one thing. You want the whiz developer, you want the whiz business marketing person, or business development person rather, um, but you want someone that's passionate and that's going to push through the tough times in the company, because you're going to have, especially in the startup world, you're going to have ups and downs. you're gonna have moments where you don't know if you're gonna be able to push through or not as a company, as an individual. Um, and it's the passion that's gonna get you up in the morning and get you to the office and make you find a way to push through it. Um, so yeah, passion and patience are the two biggest things in the esports industry, I think.
No, yeah, definitely, I agree. Especially on the patience. I mean, yeah, impatient people, and sometimes in this industry, and it's kind of sad, right? Because I see sometimes people have great ideas and great, like overall raw, really like well thought out idea, but for some odd reason, the patience isn't there, and it ends up just falling apart because they try to rush things, and it's kind of sad to see that happen with a lot of potential companies that could have gone
Yeah.
pretty big in the industry.
Yeah, and that touches back on the hopping from project to project. That's lack of
Mhm.
patience. Um,
Yeah, definitely. No, it's
also probably signals a lack of passion for what you're actually doing. It signals that you want to be successful, but you don't necessarily care what you're going to be successful in. Um, but yeah, so patience, young grasshopper is what you're looking for in the industry.
yeah, definitely. Couple more questions. This is gonna be more of a personal one. Has Jordan ever like throughout history, like, the whole span of you starting and then where you're at today, has there been like the question, should I even continue doing this ever been in your mind? Or should I
That's not on
stop?
the list, Eddie. Come on, man.
Going off script here, but hey, these are the juicy
Wait,
ones.
no, yeah, no, yeah, I mean, there's definitely been moments. I think early on, maybe not early on, but maybe halfway into the year and a half or so that I ran Colossus Esports, I was not engaged at the time, but was close to being engaged.
Mhm.
And, you know, have to validate to your girlfriend, fiance, parents, whoever it is in your situation, you need to validate why you're putting the large majority of your weekend time and every evening after you get home from your actual job and way too much money into something that's not making any money back. Um, so there are definitely moments where it's like, it's hard to validate that you're doing that just because it's something that you're passionate about.
Right.
Luckily, it was easier on my end because she understands being passionate about something, um, and she cares that I do something that makes me happy and that I'm passionate about. But there were moments where it's like, can I even validate to myself putting this much time and money into this? Is it ever going to pan out? It's again where the patience aspect comes in. Wouldn't be able to have gotten to where I am now if I hadn't, Matt never would have reached out to me if I hadn't gained the experience from running Colossus Esports to gain the experience from running Nuovo Gaming. Like if I didn't have all of that experience and
Right.
time in the industry, um, and kind of past history of work experience and dedication or whatnot, there's no way I would have been able to get to this position. So while those companies didn't pan out financially while they were being run, long term they did pan out, and they
Right.
got me to where I wanted to be in the industry. So there have definitely been moments, and it's everyone's going to hit those moments, whether it's in esports or somewhere else. But it's those moments that define you.
Oh no, yeah, I agree 100%. Right. It's almost like the easiest thing is to just call it quits and just give up on whatever you're doing. But I tell people all the time too. It's like the easy part is to quit. Right. The hardest part is to continue and truly believe in what you're doing. I think that's kind of where I come from with my whole aspect of or philosophy in esports. You have to really almost be like your own cheer squad, right? Your own support, because sometimes this could be a very lonely road. Um,
Yeah,
just because it's a lot of people don't know about it still. Your family members might be like, "Oh, yeah, he's just doing that." Nobody really
yeah,
cares. But yeah, I agree. There's going to be a lot of, you know, what's called better. I want to use this terminology, peaks and valleys, right? I think
yeah,
that's kind of like a a really good way to put it. Peaks and valleys, and just it's going to be difficult, right?
yeah.
Um,
You're gonna have high highs and low lows, and eventually you'll get to a place where the highs come much more often than the lows. Um, but you just got to be able to push through the lows when they come.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. One more question before we let you go. So obviously you've been around a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people that CEOs, CFOs, a lot of
Yeah,
these really professional people in esports. who would you say is somebody that like you really are impressed by, or really are I want to say a big fan of, right? Or somebody that you were like,
Yeah.
holy crap, this guy really, this is a very person that's very influential and inspiring in the industry.
There's this one person. What was his name? Matthew Gunnan. He runs this company called Esports One, I think. Yeah, no. Shout out. Yeah, no, he's a pretty cool guy. Very smart, and has put together a great team here, and that's a huge part of any startup is putting together a good team. If
Oh,
you
definitely.
bring in people that aren't passionate or don't have the level of talent or have a bad attitude, you're gonna drive it into the ground. Um, Outside of my company, there's this guy named Eduardo, who's the CEO of TSG. No, there's a so I like no. So if I'm actually gonna look at, I really like Noah Winston. Met him briefly at an esports conference in the past.
Hmm.
I think it was super inspiring how he was able to. Well, I think it was maybe in his sophomore or junior year of college. I think he dropped out, got out of the bat, VC funding or venture capitalist funding for his, you know, at that point in time, it was he got funding with the idea of an esports organization,
Right.
which it's so hard to just get funding with an idea rather than like no traction in the space. Like he came to them with a business plan, with the idea for building a brand, and was able to get funding, and that's very very hard to do. So that was super inspiring, and also the fact that he really cares about, he's really smart about building the Immortals brand, and
Right.
I like that as a marketing person, and he really cares about player welfare, which is awesome. Devin Nash, met him briefly at this past Busy Sports Conference in Los Angeles. He's the CEO of Counter Logic Gaming, and he is an awesome guy. Um, Very smart, cares probably more than anyone that I've met in the esports industry about the welfare of their players.
Right.
Probably him and Noah are very close on that regard. But if you talk to Devin Nash, he won't talk about anything else other than player welfare. Um, and he's very inspiring guy to be around. And non-endemics that have come into the space. I think Rick Fox is awesome, also because he really cares about. I'm sure he cares about player welfare, but it's really cool to see how much he cares about like developing these players' personal brands from just like being a player in this game to like actually being a personal brand. That's something that I think a lot of people in the esports industry, a lot of competitors in the esports industry need to do better jobs at. You
Yeah.
don't need your sports career to be over once you're done playing competitively. If you do a good job at actually building your brand and building a fan base that'll stick, that cares about you rather than your performance in League of Legends, or Call of Duty or whatever, then you can have a long-lasting career after your competitive days are over. So those three are all pretty cool.
No, definitely, I agree. It's those, especially Noah Winston, is probably one of the more influential people I've ever, discovered. Right, just
Yeah,
doing research on my own and just watching his TED talks and his interviews with esports based media outlets. It's really interesting, his whole philosophy and his take on player welfare and the whole mindset over how things should be ran from an organization's perspective. I think he has a good head on his shoulders, and more people like that in the industry can do a can be a big benefit, right?
absolutely. Can I? Oh, I want to link something in the chat
Sure,
if
just
that's okay.
link it to me, and I'll be able to
Okay. All right.
send it over. But yeah,
Cool.
besides that,
That is Devin. What I just sent you is I don't know if Noah Winston has a personal YouTube, but that's Devin Nash's personal YouTube channel where he does some really cool. He just recently started doing some really cool kind of daily vlog sort of style videos that show like the back end operations of an esports organization. And he has a lot of videos on like personal wellness and personal improvement. So I would definitely recommend checking his channel out.
yeah, definitely. Any
Very
links
cool.
like that will be put them down, in the description for you guys are watching this on YouTube after we went live. All those, Jordan's information, Esportspedia's information, all that stuff, all these links that we're talking about will be down below. Um, Besides that, just for closing, a closing question would be, what can we expect from Jordan in the future? and what can we expect from overall Esportspedia, Esports One, the whole company itself, and you.
Sure. Start from the top and work down. From Esports One, as I touched on in the very beginning, we're a software startup. We're building some really cool products. We'll be changing the way that you watch esports very soon, and it's going to be awesome. Twitch streamers,
More than
YouTube.
awesome.
Oh,
More
yeah.
than awesome.
It's
That's you're being too kind. You can be cocky. It's really
it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be better than anything that has ever existed before. Better than sliced bread. But Twitch streamers, YouTube streamers, event broadcasters, people that run gambling companies, or people that run esports organizations as well. Keep an eye out. We'll be doing a large launch in the coming months. And Esportspedia, expanding into various new titles. The one that we're most excited, or that I'm personally most excited about, is we're expanding into the collegiate esports space. Going to be covering collegiate esports in North America. If you are at a university that has, from any level, from like actual professional collegiate esports team that is, you get sponsorships for playing on it, has a varsity team and whatnot, we'll be covering that. If you have a team that's not necessarily officially an official like varsity team at the school, but you still compete, professionally, or compete in ULOL or CSL or something like that, we'll still, we'll cover that. If you have a club, we'll cover that. So it's going to be an amazing informational resource for anyone that's either into collegiate esports or involved in collegiate esports, or if you're a professional team looking to recruit from the collegiate scene, you're going to be able to go to this one place that has everyone in North America. We're going to be expanding to Europe as well. So that's going to be very cool. Also working on expanding into Counter-Strike, and a few some fighting game titles as well. That'll be fun. For me in the future, hopefully for the foreseeable future, I'll be here. I guess the lifespan of a startup is usually 5 to 10 years. Usually from creation to acquisition, someone coming in and buying it or something, or it just keeps going and leaves the startup phase and becomes a full-blown business. So hopefully I see myself being here for hopefully the next 5 to 10 years while that process is going on, and the goal being, after this wonderful journey has come to a conclusion, then I would love to take that experience and start my own company in esports, or beyond, but esports, because that's what I'm passionate about. And I already have some interesting ideas, but luckily I've learned to tamp down the shiny object syndrome, so we're holding off for a while. Yeah, so one day you'll see Jordan O'Hara CEO.
Oh, nice. So. No, definitely. But besides that, I mean, that's all the questions I have. Honestly, great answer response. Sometimes it's gonna be difficult to answer these questions because I did go off script, because sometimes these spontaneous questions that are really juicy come up. And thank you for being a trooper.
Oh, you got it, man. Yeah, it's no worries. The questions were slightly scripted, audience, but the answers were all off the top of my head. I don't like preparing too much, so.
No, nice. You like to wing it. That's
real stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Let's keep the esports tradition going. Wing things and hope for the best.
Yep.
No, definitely, Jordan. Well, yeah, thank you. It was an honor having you on. We're gonna have to have you on for a segment that we do on League of Legends. I think just big League of Legends fan. Weekend franchising would be a great topic we're going to discuss on the show with the upcoming, weeks or months, right? Because Riot just released some more information, and we'll want to, tackle that, with some very some very knowledgeable people. No, yeah, definitely. But besides that, guys, if you guys are watching this on YouTube after we went live, everything we spoke about, any videos that we were, discussing about, that we touched on, any individuals that we said, their names or whatever, will be down below. And yeah, thank you, Jordan, for coming on. His stuff will be on there as well. But besides that, I think, this is where we're going to end it. we're gonna have our weekly show tomorrow, Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So make sure you guys are there. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out Visuals by Impulse, where you guys can get the best designs for your stream, YouTube, or whatever you want, social media. But yeah, thank you, Jordan. Talk to you later, man.
Guys. See ya.
Bye-bye. Hey, nice socks. Jesus.